The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, and I'm joined by my good buddies, Bjorn Palanick and Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we are back to talk some Goosebumps. So this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. First of all, hi, welcome, how you doing? If you are or have ever been a fan of the Goosebumps series of books, or even the franchise as a whole, then I have a feeling that this podcast is going to be right up your alley. Me, Nick, and Bjorn are what I consider to be three of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the planet. We could talk about Goosebumps for hours, and we have no shortage of things to talk about, and that's exactly what we do here on this podcast. So every week we have brand new episodes where we talk about everything Goosebumps, from the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps on the name, we are going to probably talk about it until the polar ice caps melt. So if you want to hear us babble about Goosebumps for hours on end, then make sure you subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Leave a like and comment if you're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you not only subscribe, but hit the bell notification to get updates on new episodes. If you want to hear episodes a day before they go up on YouTube, you can follow our audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Episodes go up a day before the YouTube versions do. And if you want to follow the Goosebumps Crew Podcast in just what's coming up, or if you want to just see what our endeavors are, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew over on social media: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick, Goosebumps Aussie Fan, and Shaolin on their social medias and their YouTubes as well. All of those links are in the description below. Check them out. We thank you in advance for your support. Now, before we get into the topic of the week, I first want to welcome our guest for this week, Mr. Cody Leach. You may know him from Cody Leach Reviews over on YouTube. He does horror movie reviews, rankings, tier lists, and much else. So, Cody, I just want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man. I haven't talked Goosebumps in a long time, so it's a nice little fresh topic for me.
Absolutely. Well, you've come to the right place to talk some Goosebumps, so we're very excited to talk Goosebumps. But we're not only going to talk about Goosebumps today, because as you guys could probably guess, even though this is the Goosebumps Crew and we are Goosebumps fans, we are also horror fans. So we love just about everything horror-related: horror movies, shows, literature, the works. So we know a lot about things horror-related outside of Goosebumps. But we figured we would do a little bit of an interesting topic today. So, of course, you know, everybody complains about in Hollywood today that there's no originality, and that's very much true. But, I mean, everybody knows the old adage, there's only 7 stories in the world, we're just ripping off the same 7. But it got me thinking about how many Goosebumps books share similarities to popular, classic, or modern horror films. Now, horror has a lot of elements that carry over into different media, and there's a lot of different genres of horror, subgenres, tropes and whatnot. So it got me thinking about how many Goosebumps books share similarities to classic horror films. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to just kind of go down the list and see how many different similarities, comparisons, and parallels that we can draw between Goosebumps books and horror films. So this is going to be a pretty interesting one. And before we really get into it, not all of these are like super one for one. We're not going to be sitting here going rip off. You know, we're going to be going through and seeing like they can be as little as, you know, certain plot points. Some of them are just we're bringing up because they don't have similarities, but they've been brought up before. So I guess the first place to start out is with the very first Goosebumps book, and that is Welcome to Dead House. Now, a lot of people have, considering the story is about zombies in a sense, a lot of people have compared it to Night of the Living Dead or just like any other zombie movie. And while that's definitely true, I personally think that Welcome to Deadhouse is similar to two movies in certain areas. That's the Omega Man and I Am Legend. Number one, the zombies in Welcome to Deadhouse are killed by sunlight, which is true in both of those movies. And also, both of those movies take place in sort of a post-apocalyptic environment, involving basically the last human living on Earth. And while Welcome to Deadhouse doesn't have anything as drastic as that, and that would be a little too far for Goosebumps, you are in a sense that you are in an isolated environment surrounded by the undead. And moving into this house, like the characters do, is almost like a trap. Like you're being trapped, and then the whole town's going to swarm you and turn you into more of them. So, what do you guys think? Do you think that's a fair comparison?
I think it probably has parallels throughout all of it. I mean, the zombie subgenre kind of deals with all of that in its own way. It's usually post-apocalyptic or isolation, whether you have like 28 weeks later, or they're all in the house at the beginning, and then the dead just kind of breaks through. Or you have the Omega Man and the I Am Legend, which is kind of like a vampiric zombie offshoot. I mean, a lot of those movies and a lot of the stories that you get with zombies kind of cross over into that. So I think it's pretty easy. I don't know if he necessarily wrote the book with the intention of like, this is my Omega Man, but it's just one of those genres where there's so many parallels across all of them that they all kind of intermingle.
Absolutely. And funny enough that you bring up, like the sort of vampire zombies, because that's basically what these zombies are too, because they feast on blood instead of flesh. And of course, they
killed
burn
by
in the
daylight.
sunlight.
Yeah.
And they're killed by daylight. Yeah. It's weird that they're not just vampires, because they're essentially vampires other than the fact that, they can't turn into bats or whatever, like the typical vampire things.
Is that what separates them out? Because the thing is, like, they don't really, I guess, call them zombies per se, because they're very aware. Like, they're still everyday people almost, to the point of they can talk to you. They look normal as long as they feed on blood, kind of a deal. When you think zombie, you think like rotting corpse and stuff. And then you kind of get that at the end of Deadhouse. Once they actually reveal themselves and they're starting to get really hungry. But other than that, I mean, like, I don't know, like I feel like they're just kind of hungry vampires at that point.
Exactly. Well, and the interesting thing about the episode adaptation is that it is what makes that episode so unnerving. It's what I consider to be one of the best ones. But the fact that over time, like when they first move in, like everybody they don't act normal, but they look normal. So you would probably just be like, oh, they're just kind of weird. But the more time goes on, their skin gets more gray. There's like blemishes and deformities that start to appear. Like by the end, everybody who looked normal at the beginning looks like really like they're rotting, which is creepy in its own sense. Another film I want to bring comparison to, just because of how the zombies come to be, is one of my favorite zombie movies, Return of the Living Dead. Because the whole thing starts as a chemical accident from a factory. And I don't know if they specifically say it was like a gas, but it basically killed everyone and then brought them back to life as the undead. And that's exactly what happens in Return of the Living Dead. They either bring zombies back from the grave, or in the sense of Tom Matthew and I forget the other guy's names, characters, they get sprayed with the gas, they die, but then they get back up. So they're like undead. So that's sort of parallel right there. But that is sort of the thing about the zombie genre, as you were saying, Cody, is that it crosses over so much that you can basically pinpoint a bunch of different movies to Deadhouse in a sense. But those were the three I personally felt were the most like it, if you were to kind of like put them in a blender and see what came out.
Yeah.
So that said, I mean, what are your favorite kind of zombies, guys? I mean, what do we like the running kind that come after you? You like those Walking Dead
I still really like Return of the Living
crawlers?
Dead, because I don't think that movie gets enough credit, because that's the movie not only before Zack Snyder, did Dawn of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead was running zombies, and also it was the first movie that had brain-eating zombies. Every time a movie or a show has a zombie saying brains, it came from that movie. Because before then, the George Romero movies, it was just eating flesh. They would just eat any part. But the Return of the Living Dead zombies,
and they got picky and they got bougie later, I guess, and
yeah, they just got
brains after that.
They started getting on that high class stuff.
My favorite zombie movie was Shaun of the Dead. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Like, I know it's a comedy, but that's my favorite. I just think it's
it's a comedy, but there's a scene where he shoots his mother in the face in that movie.
I love it. It's so classic, and it's 20 years now. Yeah. This year's the 20th anniversary of Shaun of the Dead, which is scary to think.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2004.
Dang, dude.
2004 had a lot of great movies.
I graduated in 04. That's wild.
2004 had all the best movies, I think. It was a good year for films, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep, my favorite types are the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, 28 Days Later, like the fast, ferocious ones. I like the slow zombies, but I've just never really been that scared of them. You know what I mean? Just they're more about the numbers, the hordes. Whereas the zombies in those movies, it's like, yeah, that's intense. Like the world's done.
Yeah, that opening scene is still like one of the freakiest opening scenes in a horror movie, in Dawn of the Dead. So yeah, I totally.
8 weeks later as well.
Think about running down that hill. Zombies that can run are really freaking scary, especially when you put them in a horde. Like a horde of like slow moving zombies is creepy, but it's like, as long as you can run, like I think you'll be okay.
Or walk fast, even.
Or walk fast.
In some circumstances, it's like, if you can power walk, you can get away. So.
Or you got a nice little moped. You go.
That's why I like Zombieland so much. You gotta watch when you're in the bathroom. Those crawlers underneath there and all the other stuff. That might be one of my favorites, if not my favorite one.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Moving on to another classic Goosebumps story, Say Cheese and Die. Now, there's actually two movies that I found comparisons to. Definitely the most similar one, and this honestly may be the most like one for one with the original movie or the book, is 2019's Polaroid. That's a movie about someone who finds a camera that if you take someone's picture, they end up meeting, an untimely demise. Now, despite the title of Say Cheese and Die, it doesn't exactly telegraph someone's death. It's just kind of a bad thing that will happen. Now, obviously, some of those things can lead to death. For example, a car crash, like in the book. But Polaroid definitely takes a more the more gruesome angle on it. It's like people will die if they get their picture taken. And then you also have, similarly, but more or less, again, just a certain plot point, Final Destination 3 has the premonitions are told by the pictures that one character takes of all the characters, or at least it's linked in a sense. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with those? Do you think it connects to any other sort of movie?
Yeah, both of those are pretty close. Polaroid, I think, is a foreign film. And then there was an American remake, if I'm not mistaken. So there'd be two different versions of that. And then Final Destination, just in general, is kind of that whole premonition thing. I'm trying to look up the name of a movie. There's one that I remember. It's less about premonition and more about like time travel, where you had like this camera that had the ability to look into the future. And then there was like this horror twist to it where it was being manipulated to show premonitions or like some kind of an omen of death. I'll look for the title of it while you guys continue, but that's one that I'm.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds so familiar, and I don't remember the name of that one either.
Yeah, one thing I will bring up is
that sounds like almost exact too, with the exception of like obviously, I don't think it's been a while since I read the book, but nobody died in the episode, obviously. So.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely. I know that
those arch twists on horror
series had a little more. One thing I'll give the 2023 series adaptation is it went a little more dark in the pictures it took. One of the pictures resulted in one of the characters having like an allergic reaction, like that did almost kill her. And then the scene on the football field, which honestly I neglected to mention in our interview with Ben Cockell. That's a great scene on the football field with all the skeleton football players, and they're like covered in fire. Like that's freaking awesome. But yeah, that's the thing.
That just made me think more like Batman with Scarecrow fear toxin kind of stuff when the episode and the animated series had something like similar to that. It was like almost seemed like football players and stuff, and yeah, it almost seemed more like a fear toxin thing rather than, you know, the camera or anything, which was kind of weird. But again, they were doing something new with Goosebumps, so.
Also, one thing I'll bring up is there's definitely comparisons to the Twilight Zone. I know that everybody always tells me that there was a Twilight Zone episode that was essentially this, and they're always talking about how R.L. Stine took inspiration. We won't go too much into detail about Twilight Zone, except for one example that I will get to later because it relates to the Twilight Zone movie. But if you want to know more about,
I feel we covered that a lot on those past episodes we did. I
was about to say, if anyone in our audience has watched episode 22 with Dr. Wolfie on Horror for Kids, we talked a lot about horror anthology shows like Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt. So if you want to know more about that, go check out that episode.
The name of the movie I was looking for is called Time Lapse from 2014. It's got Daniel Panabaker and Matt O'Leary and a couple other people. So it's loose, but basically what that one was, there's a camera that takes a picture at the same time every night, and it shows 24 hours in the future. And so knowing the future starts to have very grave consequences for people. And so I don't want to spoil the twist in the movie, but it goes a little more in a horror direction by the end of it. That's closer to Say Cheese and Die.
That is very interesting. I haven't heard of that movie, and
it's pretty decent. I don't want to oversell it, but it's pretty decent.
Well, and the idea of it being used is like, it's not, you know, like the camera itself is not evil per se. It's just kind of like, it's just what will happen in the future. It is also a very good concept because of course you can just say like, oh, no matter what, it's going to be bad. But it's like, sometimes the future is just bad, but it's the knowledge of the future that is scary. Like, there's always a thing about like, would you actually like to know like the exact date and time of your death? It's like, that's something that information that no one would really want. So that sort of thing.
I'll take it.
What would you take it for?
Because if I knew, like, if I was going to die tomorrow, you know what I would do today? Probably a lot of cool stuff I wouldn't have done
do today. That's a short answer.
I plan for the future. If I don't have to plan for the future tomorrow, other than that time of day where I'm going to die, I'll go do some stuff.
I guess. Now, there's going to be a little bit of this that we'll talk about later in some of the more or less likely comparisons. But one that I found that was pretty interesting was that The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, that's the 5th Goosebumps book, there's actually a 50s movie called The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. And funnily enough, from what I've heard, the plots are basically similar. They're basically the same, except the main character's age is significantly different. In the Goosebumps book, it's a kid. In the movie, it's an adult. It's an explorer. Curse of the Mummy's Tomb's never really been a standout Goosebumps book for me. It's not even the episode that they made first. They went to the sequel right away, but it's never been a Goosebumps story that really was that interesting for me. So I more just found it funny that there is a movie out there that shares the exact same name.
There's a couple of them that are pretty direct references to Universal monsters, isn't there? There's like a Phantom of the Opera one and some other ones.
Yeah.
Yep. Phantom of the Auditorium is basically Phantom of the Opera in in a school for a school play. There's a little bit of difference. There's a little bit of difference. The Goosebumps book has it deals a little more with the actual supernatural. So there are real ghosts, and it's a little dark because there's child death in it. But it's a pretty interesting book. But yeah, and there's also another one I actually want to bring up is, I didn't think about this till very recently, but Why I'm Afraid of Bees is actually very similar to The Fly. Now, if you look at the cover of the book, it looks exactly like that. It's just like the in the 1958 Fly with the fly with the human head. He's like, help me. But it is kind of like that. This one though, it deals a little more with brain transfer. It's not like a straight transformation like the 50s film or the remake. Definitely not like the remake. But it deals a little more with like brain swapping. So of course the main character's brain gets swapped into a bee. But then the bee's brain goes into his body. So he looks normal, but he's just like acting like a bee, just like it does have a great ending too. He's like he gets back to normal, but then he's like, I think he starts pollinating a flower or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Great Goosebumps, classic stuff. Let's get a little more into the interesting ones. I personally believe that the sixth book, Let's Get Invisible, is actually very similar, not to the Invisible Man. That's one that a lot of people, again, just kind of like the surface level comparisons. I don't believe that one. What I do think it's similar to is actually something like either Flatliners or Talk to Me. The idea of kids messing with a supernatural object for fun, but then the more they use it, the more the supernatural stuff starts to take over. In this case, the kids use a mirror that makes them invisible. Cool stuff, right? You get to be invisible. The more they use it, though, there's evil versions of themselves on the other side of the mirror in like the mirror world. And the more they use it, the more susceptible they are to being replaced with these evil copies, and then they're trapped forever in the mirror dimension. So I thought that was pretty similar to like Talk to Me, just the idea of kids using a supernatural object for fun, but then it turns, sinister.
Yeah, also kind of the pushing your boundaries too with Flatliners and Talk to Me, where it just starts out like one person does it for a minute, and then the next person wants to go bigger, so they do it for 90 seconds, and the next person wants to do it for 2 minutes, and then the worse it gets. So
definitely. So let's get into the big one, the big boy of it all. We got to talk about Night of the Living Dummy and Slappy. Now, Slappy is a horror trope in and of itself. Living dolls are everywhere in horror. Again, people were comparing Slappy to like Talking Tina in the Twilight Zone, or even the dummy episode in the Twilight Zone. I forget what it is. I think it's just called The Dummy. It was like Willie the Dummy. There's actually a really good video by Pushing Up Roses on YouTube that dives a little more into that comparison. But Slappy himself is pretty similar to a lot of horror dolls, but there's 3 different properties I think translate well to Slappy. The first and most obvious one is Chucky. Now, Cody, yeah, I was about to say, Cody, I know you're a big Chucky fan. So I guess I'll start with you quick. Do you think that Slappy and Chucky are pretty similar characters?
I mean, having a reanimated doll that's trying to kind of manipulate children, I mean, it's very similar there. Only one's just way more evil with his intentions.
Yeah, exactly.
And a little bit more deliberate with it. But yeah, similar. I always, I remember I had the VHS tape for, I think it was Night of the Living Dummy Part 3. Is that the one with Hayden Christensen?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the one I had that I remember. I used to watch that a lot because it was like my Chucky Goosebumps episode that I always liked. So yeah, I always drew those comparisons. And then there's been a bunch of other, pseudo Chuckies. Yeah, like Pinocchio's Revenge. And I would even say Megan is kind of like a modern day version of Chucky that takes a bit of that. So
absolutely. Well, and the funny thing I will say about, because Slappy and Chucky are definitely. I don't see Slappy dancing like that.
I don't see Chucky dancing like that either yet.
Didn't they do a direct reference to Megan in the Chucky TV series? I'm pretty sure I saw. Yeah, he was like, "What the hell is this?" It was kind of like
Freegan.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like, boo. One thing that's interesting about Slappy and Chucky is that they are both similar, but they're also different, more different in their motivations. Well, one thing I will bring up is the original Night of the Living Dummy. Bjorn knows this all too well, has a character named Mr. Wood. And it actually, I guess I'll throw in one more comparison. Night of the Living Dummy 1 is actually very similar to Friday the 13th part one, because Slappy, like Jason, is not the main antagonist. It's a different character named Mr. Wood. And we watched a video recently of like the top 13 Goosebumps books, and I remember the person doing the video was like, Mr. Wood's more of a bastard than Slappy ever was, in my opinion. Because in the book, I mean, he does all the typical Slappy things, but then he like ends up trying to strangle the family dog to death. Like he's just like groping onto the dog's throat, and they're like, and it's like, holy shit! It was like Slappy never did anything like that. But both Slappy and Chucky are possessed dolls in their own sense. Slappy was cast a spell on by a sorcerer, and Chucky is possessed by the spirit of a serial killer. But they're both sort of like wisecracking dolls. What you said before about, tormenting children, that is what both of them do. Chucky more does it for his own, means. In the first three movies, he wants to, transfer his soul into a living body. He wants to get out of the doll body. Slappy more just wants to kind of be in control. He always wants to turn people into slaves to do his bidding. And the interesting thing about Night of the Living Dummy and Child's Play, what I found out was that Night of the Living Dummy has Living Dummy 2 and 3, and then the fourth one is Bride of the Living Dummy. What does Chucky have? Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, and Bride of Chucky. So I thought that was pretty funny. In fact, if I remember correctly, Nick, when we talked with Ron Oliver, he said that did he say that I think he said something about the director like took inspiration or something?
So he mentioned that he had talked with the director about it, and for Bride of Chucky, and a lot of the sequences and like the character stuff was, I think, taken through what Ron did with that episode. And even down to Ron saying that, like, because we were comparing some of the shots from Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, and what they did on the Goosebumps series with Night of the Living Dummy 2 and 3. Similar shots, POV from Chucky from the first one, where it's just a camera walking through. Slappy did that also, and things like that. And we were like, yeah, did you happen to, take some of the inspiration from that shot? He's like, oh, I'm sure we did. I'm sure we just ripped that straight off. So, I mean, which is fair. I mean, it's a good POV shot. And if you're going to have a main antagonist be a doll or a dummy, then you got to have some POV shots, I think. Makes it a little creepy to see their point of view.
Definitely more of that in the first Child's Play and just the POV shots, because they're trying to build up the mystery of it. But once you got to the second one, it was like full blown. No, he's the guy. He's the person you all want to see.
Then, yeah.
Also, I will say that Living Dummy 2 and Child's Play 2 are the best of their franchises. So just like that.
There you go.
Absolutely.
I agree. I agree.
But moving on from Chucky, there's also a few other films to bring up. One of them is Magic from the 70s. Now, that movie is about a ventriloquist who, I don't know if I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I don't remember if they explicitly say that the dummy is alive or if it's just kind of like a split personality game. But basically, a ventriloquist is kind of tormented by what his dummy is telling him. When eventually leads to murder. Ooh. Something like that was done in Bride of the Living Dummy, both the book and the episode, where a ventriloquist gets a hold of Slappy, but Slappy's the one being like, you're going to do what I tell you, or like bad stuff's going to happen. He's like, well, I don't want to do like this whole act. Because he's basically, the one reason I really like Bride of the Living Dummy is because Slappy's just being himself. Like, the ventriloquist isn't doing anything. He's doing shows with Slappy, but Slappy is just like essentially just talking to the audience and insulting everybody. My favorite line is still he's like, what do you think of this audience? He's like, this is an audience? For a moment there, I thought we were working at the zoo. Favorite line.
Always has the great one-liners, Slappy.
No, definitely. That's another reason why I think him and Chucky are good, and they're both wisecracking assholes. They'll crack a one-liner before they, I don't know, slit your throat or something. I don't know. But and then Another one I wanted to bring up, I have to remember. Oh,
Is this Dead Silence?
I was gonna say everybody always compares Dead
Silence
to Living Dummy. I definitely think the design of Billy is Slappy-esque.
Mhm.
I didn't even share a picture of Billy from Dead Silence on his social media. Like, why? I have no idea. Maybe he thought this was Slappy for some reason from like the movie or something. There was no context behind it. He just shared a picture of it.
Yeah,
but it was weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It looked the same.
But I don't know. I love Dead Silence. That was one of my favorite horror movies. And I can see where there's some comparison, but I mean, the really only connection is the fact that there's dummies, to be honest. So again, it's a surface level connection. Yeah. I don't really see much else in that because it wasn't so much the dolls themselves did anything. They did and they didn't. It was always Mary Shaw. So still the ventriloquist, not the...
No relation.
No relation.
Well, that's the thing.
No relation to me.
Most dummy movies, not all of them, but most of them are usually about like what the ventriloquist and the dummy and not the dummy itself. Slappy is really the only time that a ventriloquist dummy has been independent and the one behind everything. Sometimes whether it's supernatural or like they do, again, the whole split personality sort of thing. One of my favorites is the Tales from the Crypt episode, the ventriloquist dummy, because it wasn't even a dummy at all. It was a deformed Siamese twin on the ventriloquist's hand. I talked about it before. It's one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It was Don Rickles.
That made me think more like again, that was more of like a Batman reference in my mind, like the ventriloquist with the dummy Scarface.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very similar, but yeah, that twist in Twilight Zone episode was messed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
That deformed brother on his arm.
He's like, what an ugly bastard. Yeah,
but
so
I think like maybe Puppet Master would be a better comparison. I know they're not ventriloquists per se because they're, puppets. They're string puppets. They're meant to be, but they're still alive. They still do all the mischief stuff. They still do everything. It's not someone else controlling them per se.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Although I'll straight up admit, and I know it's blasphemy to some people, but I did not. I tried so hard. I cannot watch those Puppet Master movies, man. They're pretty rough.
They're terrible.
Isn't there like 20 of them?
They're bad.
They're upwards of 16 of them. Somebody requested for me back when I used to do review requests to do the first one, and it was a struggle. And then everybody was like, you got to watch the second one. The second one's the best one. And then somebody'd say the third one's the best one or the fourth one's the best one. And so like 5 years later, I watched the second one and I was like, I'm done. I'm not watching 14 more of these.
Well, I will say, hopefully, if you do a 31 on 31 on, Living Dolls, hopefully, Puppet Master's not on the table. That'll be half the month.
Why do you hate me?
I didn't know there were 16 of those movies. Jesus Christ.
There's something up there. There's some of them that'll surprise you, like that and Amityville Horror, where you look up how many there are that are like, official, and you're like, whoa, how?
Children of the Corn's got quite a few. There's one other one I keep seeing more and more. Oh, Hellraiser. I just keep seeing more and more. I don't even know how many there are of those now either, but man.
Wasn't it funny that some of the worst horror franchises are the ones that probably have like the most sequels?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a sense.
See, like the original Hellraiser, fantastic. Even I think Hellraiser 2, I enjoyed a good amount, enough to rewatch it if I wanted to. But man, they just started really slipping after that second one. Even that remake one was, oh God, Resident Evil. Don't get me started on that. That's a lot.
I enjoy the first one. Like I enjoy the first Resident Evil. Like I think there's some redeeming qualities in that first one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't amazing, but it was still enjoyable. Popcorn. It's just a popcorn movie.
It is. It definitely is. One suggestion that was made to me, because I put an Instagram post out a few weeks ago, just sort of getting the audience's opinions on this topic. And one person brought up that they felt The Sixth Sense was similar to The Ghost Next Door. I I feel like the only reason that comparison's there is because there's a kid that can speak to the dead. It's not exactly the same in Ghost Next Door. It's basically one kid who can see one ghost, but the Sixth Sense is sort of like, a kid who can see a lot of dead people. So I don't know if that one really translates a lot. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I don't know. If you're going to go that route, then you could really say like A Haunting in Connecticut, and I'm sure there's 2 or 3 others right now that I just can't think of off the top of my head that are very similar, where it's a child who can speak with the dead for one reason or another. I don't know. I mean, it's, again, it might be a surface level comparison, but
at that point you can compare it to Paranorman.
Yeah, the only plot point I can think of,
exactly.
He didn't realize he was dead for most of it, as he didn't realize he was dead for most of it. That's really all I can compare. That's one thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can think of in that whole movie, because like he didn't realize obviously he was dead for a long time, and Hannah didn't realize she was dead for a while. So that's it. That's all I can really compare the two with.
Yeah. Ooh, now we're on to
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan. Moving on to arguably the best Goosebumps book, The Haunted Mask. There are 2 movies that I found comparable to that one, and the first one is actually 2014's Clown, directed by John Watts, who, funny enough, would go on to do the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. What a jump that was.
Yeah.
Clown is essentially a movie about a dad who buys like a clown, what he believes to be a clown costume, and he puts it on, and it like slowly turns into a clown, but like it's not actually a clown, it's a demon that looks like a clown and eats kids. So there's a lot of similarities to the Haunted Mask, putting on a costume, or in this case a mask, that becomes a part of you, and it changes you into something that you're not. There's sort of like an underlying evil to the transformation. In Clown sense, it's a lot more feral, a lot more ferocious, and bloody. But in the Haunted Mask, it's a lot more psychological. It's like a psychological takeover. It's sort of like your inner demons coming out into the open. But I found it pretty interesting. I know I don't know like what the general consensus on Clown is. I thought it was a pretty interesting concept for a movie. The one scene I will never get out of my head is when he tries to, he puts a gun in his mouth and tries to shoot himself, and the blood is rainbow colored. And not to mention he doesn't die. So it's a pretty interesting concept.
Did you ever see Clown, Cody?
I have. It was one of those movies that got a lot of buzz when it first came out, because if I'm not mistaken, it had like Eli Roth Presents on the poster. Which basically means they gave him $100,000 to like give him a high five, and I don't think it had anything to do with the actual movie. But it was interesting. It didn't quite deliver what I was hoping from it, but it is an interesting movie. But John Watts in general is kind of an odd director, because you have the movie Cop Car with Kevin Bacon, and then you have the Spider-Man movies, and it's like I've seen 5 movies from this guy, and I still can't tell you like what his style is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he jumps from genre to genre so often. It's like leapfrogging. So that's why I was like, wait, he directed that and then he went on to do that. So
I mean, even if he stayed in the same genre, I mean, you wouldn't be able to probably tell he did it. It's really weird. Like there are some directors, their stylization transcends any genre. You can tell immediately, like this is Zack Snyder or this is Quentin Tarantino. Not him though. Like I would have to like look it up, see who did this movie. And
at least when Sam Raimi did his Spider-Man movies, he at least had some aspects of of his previous work in there.
Right.
Spider-Man 2 hospital scene. Anyone?
Yes.
So another movie in terms of like putting on masks and transformations is Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. Now that movie, the masks come on and then it like rots you from the inside. It kills you essentially. There's different motivations behind it. So that one is more of a surface level one. But I like Halloween 3.
Same.
Oh yeah, I love
Halloween 3.
That's one of those movies that was shit on for so long ever since it came out, and then like now the last few years, people are being like, "Wait, this movie's bad? Wait a minute, no, it's good."
Yeah, found a new life. I mean, I know it's been talked to death by so many podcasts and so many YouTube channels and stuff, but it really is sad that like it didn't get the love it really deserved back then. But that kind of goes with a lot of movies like Trick or Treat. Like probably my favorite Halloween movie, just because it covers the whole aesthetic of Halloween. It's amazing. And that was supposed to get a theatrical run and didn't. Kind of had to take its own way to get popularity, and that's kind of the way Halloween 3 had to go. Everybody shat on it because there was no Michael Myers, even though he was technically in it.
Yeah,
he was on that TV for at least 5 seconds. He was in that film.
Yeah, I remember somebody was like losing their mind. Is like, wait, how can Halloween be a movie in this universe? And it was like, who cares? It doesn't even have Michael Myers in it. But I mean, The Haunted Mask is, while we can compare it to those movies, The Haunted Mask itself is such an interesting concept for a Goosebumps book. Like I said at the beginning, like it's arguably one of the best Goosebumps books, if not Goosebumps stories, because the episode is awesome too. But one thing I will say is that, as much as we can compare, Goosebumps does find some ways to make its stories, even if they're similar, unique and fresh in certain ways. There's one story that we'll get to coming up. But The Haunted Mask is definitely one of those examples. One that is not one of those examples is Werewolf of Fever Swamp, because it's essentially a werewolf story down to its bare basics. One commenter said that movie or that book is similar to the movie Bad Moon, because it does have a red herring with a dog. I have not seen Bad Moon, so I cannot attest to that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've seen Bad Moon, and that is an element of it where you have the dog and the mom's afraid that because they have a mom, you have a kid, the kid's attached to the dog, and then you have an uncle living in the backyard, and it's not the dog. So yeah,
that's the thing. It's like when you're poised with a werewolf, it's like, why would you think a dog would do any of that? Like, I think we talked about this when we did our 2-parter ranking of Goosebumps, but it's like, how do the parents take a look at like the humongous bite marks in big planks of wood and think that it's the dog, like the normal dog? Is like, if you're a rational human being, you're being like, that's not a fucking dog.
Yeah, it's wild to me. Like in Fever Swamp, these scientists, of all people, they're scientists, but you work with animals of all things too, but you can't figure out that this shepherd's bite isn't as big as what looks like a Saint Bernard's bite or something on this wood plank.
They're too busy having their heart on for deer.
Okay.
Some shit.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, I love Bad Moon. That was a great one. And it was based on a book called Thor, which was the dog in the movie as well. Same name, but also a shepherd, funny enough. But they do kind of explain, at least in that one, it's like, well, okay, it can't be the dog. At least they're smart enough to say that, it's like, it can't be the dog, wolves get so big and much bigger and blah, blah, blah. The dude's not even a scientist and can tell you that. So I don't know what they were thinking when writing Goosebumps when they did that, but
yeah, it's just the logical thing of like, parents don't believe the kids, but taken to like probably the stupidest level. Because if you say that like, oh, that ventriloquist dummy's coming alive, you're going to be like, yeah, right. But if you're like, you're seeing like animals getting ripped apart like spaghetti and you're going to be like, it's not the dog, it's a werewolf. You're probably going to be like, well, I don't know if I believe the werewolf, but I don't think that dog did it. I don't know.
Well, right. I mean, it was only Grady with the common sense. I mean, he literally looked at his parents and was like, he might as well just said, "Are you stupid?" He's like, "Hey, it's like, you think a dog could do that to a fence?"
Well, I mean, they just like kind of stupid because they're like, "Did the swamp hermit hurt you?" And he's like, "No." It's like, he trapped you in a net and held you hostage in a shack while he ate chicken. He kind of hurt you
with his grody fingernails.
Yeah, that was nasty. Going back to the Haunted Mask, let's talk about Haunted Mask 2 and to a lesser extent the episode An Old Story, and talk about another Shyamalan movie, Old. because that one is they're all stories that deal with people aging very rapidly. In Goosebumps sense, they're kids. It happens in old too, but like kids going from kids to like really really old very quickly. In terms of the haunted mask, it's another mask, but instead of turning you evil, it turns you old. And the body horror is there, especially in the episode. You got like the hands turning into like really grody and the fingernails becoming really long. And in an old story, it's just an aunt trying to pimp out her nephews. It's one of the weirdest.
To her old bitty friends, to the Golden Girls.
Yeah, it's one of the weirdest Goosebumps stories. But obviously, in old, there's different circumstances because you go to a beach, and then everyone's turning old. But it also gets into like the things that come with like aging rapidly. So like for the kids, for example, like as they rapidly age, hormones start to set in, and then one of them gets pregnant, and then the baby dies inside them. It's very unnerving. It's like that's one of those movies where I'm like, being like, can I turn this off? Like,
yeah, that one didn't work for me at all. Yeah. Shyamalan was extreme hit or miss.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about before, man. It's really funny how like I don't know, maybe like 50% of his movies are good, but that's also the kicker because I think he funds a lot of the movies himself, and a lot of his stuff is original, so I can't knock him for doing stuff. I mean, with the exception being like Knock at the Cabin wasn't an original by any means, but and I think there was one other one. I can't remember which one it was though. But regardless, I mean, he's so hit and miss. And when he misses though, I mean, he misses big. I mean, it's not even like a little bit. It's like, oh, it could have been great except for this. Yeah. Old was a prime example. It was a weird movie. The ending was odd too. And then The Happening. I don't know if you ever watched that one, but oh my God.
You're going to kill me, aren't you? Comedies. It's like, no, man, we're not. What? No. That's the best.
Yeah, no. I only like two of his films, Sixth Sense and Signs.
I actually
not
really
an Unbreakable fan.
I don't know. I like certain subject matters. I like the Sixth Sense idea. I like extraterrestrials.
You like The Visit? I actually thought that was one of his better films. Creepy. I thought The Visit.
I do like Unbreakable. I'm looking forward to Trap.
That is a pretty interesting one.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm just excited to see him back.
Yeah.
Now, going on to Monster Blood, a lot of people would say that it's very similar to The Blob, and in some aspects it is. But I got one for you better. The Stuff.
Blob that ate everyone.
the Blob that ate everyone is very similar to The Blob when The Blob is in the story, but it's not for most of the story. But I actually consider Monster Blood to be similar to The Stuff. For those of you who haven't seen The Stuff, it's a pretty fun movie. I wouldn't say it's like an amazing movie, but it's one I have fun with. It's about this extraterrestrial sort of white stuff that's repurposed into a dessert because it's like really addictive. It tastes really good, and it's sold as like an ice cream dessert. The whole movie itself is like a commentary on like American capitalism because everyone just goes nuts for it. But it's an alien, and it like the more you eat it, the more it takes over your mind. It kind of turns you into like zombies. But then the stuff itself is alive. I more consider the way the stuff in that movie moves to sort of like how Monster Blood is, and even down to like effects from the person eating it. Because if somebody eats Monster Blood, they grow super big. But the Monster Blood itself is also alive, and it also eats people. So I more consider it similar to that. Obviously, gelatinous stuff eating people is also blob-esque. But that's another one of those like more surface level ones in a sense.
Yeah, The Stuff it's a goofy movie. I remember the trailer being like really scary as a kid, where I was like, "What is this movie?" Like they show all the good scare scenes like back to back to back, and it's like The Stuff. Like when those old school trailers where you get somebody with a deep voice, And then you watch the movie and it's so cheesy.
It is.
You're like, this is not the bill of goods I was sold.
Yeah, it's a movie that has a "Where's the beef" reference. Where's the stuff? I'll always remember James Rolfe review of the movie because he feigns like fake excitement the whole time. He likes the movie, but he's just kind of like, the stuff is like, oh, it's a movie about this awesome thing. It's the stuff. Like, but like I said, it's like a commentary on like 80s capitalism, consumerism, more like it at the time. So there's a lot of commercial homages in there. They have a jingle which was stuck in my head for a long time after I saw the movie. It was like, I can't get enough of the stuff, something like that. But it's an interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Oh, here we go. No, going into an episode of the show, and then there is a short story, but the episode's more like it. And this is not a horror movie comparison at all, but Click compared to Click.
To Click.
It's the same.
Compared, the Adam Sandler movie Click is similar to a Goosebumps episode and story that came out, I think, like 10 years before, which is funny. Everybody likes to make the comparison like Adam Sandler ripped off Goosebumps. Because the story is about a kid who gets a remote that he can do anything with. So he can pause things, he can change color, he can rewind, he can fast forward. Again, not a horror movie comparison, but I just thought it was funny. It's honestly the most blatant ripoff related to Goosebumps, and it's not even horror related. What do you guys think of Click, by the way? Because many people squash it in with like the Adam Sandler movie, because everybody always squishes it in from what I see with like the bad Adam Sandler movies. And while it's not good,
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was
made me cry, honestly, when Henry Winkler started getting emotional when his son was ignored.
Really freaking sad.
It made me, that was hard, that scene. Because like I've been in that situation where like my dad's just walked away crying when I said something that upset him, and that really hit me.
Yeah,
that whole scene was hard. I was like, why do people bash this movie so much? I know it's a lot of cringy stuff early on, but there are some pretty emotional scenes where they got it right.
For me,
it tickles your nerves.
Yeah, for me, I always call it like the last great Adam Sandler comedy. Like everything after that was either okay or bad to me. Click was the last one that like really had a lot of that classic kind of man-child humor from that we all know and love from the early Adam Sandler. But like you said, much more emotional. That movie wrecks me in the last 30 minutes. I mean, anything having to do with father-son stuff is like the stuff that'll get me going the fastest because I'm very close to my father. But yeah, everything from him and Henry Winkler to then him having his life just be over in a flash, and now he's got to just use his last moments to try to correct things with his son, and just it's a big tonal shift. But I've always thought it was a great movie. I don't understand the hate for it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like that movie, you go into it, you're like, oh, Adam Sandler comedy. Look, he's farting in his boss's face. And then you get to that last third, and you're like, this was not the movie we were in 20 minutes ago.
Yeah,
so,
that's great. I think Click is
that's one of the best things about I think that movie in general. It can actually kind of bob and weave between, funny, dramatic, back to funny, getting serious, dramatic, back to funny. It was a nice weave, and it didn't leave you like basically crying the whole movie. It wanted you to have those moments of levity to give you a little break. I mean, even down to his death scene where him and Sean Astin are there, and he just puts that middle finger up. I freaking died.
And then he's like,
emotional scene, but I'm just like, yeah. And he just kind of like, you're right.
Yeah,
it's so good.
You got to give credit to some of the performances in that, though. When they needed to turn it on, they turned it on. So it was great.
Moving on to, I guess one thing I will say about the Goosebumps Click, it's definitely one of the better adaptations of the short stories in the TV show. I really love the scene where he messes with the bully, where he's just like he's changing channels. And like, because he's like, well, what are you going to do with that stupid remote? And he changes the channel, and he's a game show host. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't answer that in the form of a question. And then when he's done, he brings him back to normal, and he's like, oh my God, I need to sit down.
Turns him into a bunny rabbit.
Yeah, he's. Can you say Holman is a bully?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that was one of the better short ones, definitely.
Mhm. It was one of the better comedic ones too. It's like there is a little bit of unease in it because the way he gets the remote is really creepy. That's one thing that's different from, the Adam Sandler movie is that the origin of the remote is very mysterious, and he's constantly being visited by like this guy in a suit. He's like, be careful how you use that. And then the whole episode ends with him in this dark void. And he's like, we hope you enjoyed using our product. And then he just disappears.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dude in the episode was way creepier than Christopher Walken, obviously, in the movie because Christopher Walken wasn't meant to be.
I'm Christopher Walken.
Fast food shortened your life.
I still love
I will say, like, Adam Sandler, I agree with you, Cody. Like, he hasn't done a lot of great things after Click. That was probably the last movie I did buy. I will say, though, I actually really enjoyed Hubie Halloween, though, that he did. But that's a Netflix thing, since he pretty much only does Netflix stuff now.
Yeah.
But Hubie Halloween was pretty good, in my opinion. I really enjoyed that.
I liked Hustle. Hustle was good.
Yeah, his dramatic stuff has been good for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just weird to see him go to that dramatic stuff. But I mean, again, with Click, it showed that he could do that stuff. So, he proved himself.
Well, even before that, because I want to say it was before that anyway. Like, I don't know if you ever watched that really serious 9/11 movie. And was it called
Rain Over Me?
Yeah. Like, that was a very serious role.
Punch Drunk Love, because that was
Punch Drunk Love. That was a more of a serious one too.
Yeah.
But he can do it. I mean, it's not out of his wheelhouse. He's just known for that comedy because SNL and obviously everything he primarily has done has been widely renowned. Has been comedy. First dates and exactly. all the gibberish things that he says.
Stuff like that. Yeah. Moving on to the next book in our wheelhouse, we have Stay Out of the Basement. And there's another two movies that I consider certain plot points to. One is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Because Invasion of the Body Snatchers is about pod people, essentially plant-like clones that take over the world. And Stay Out of the Basement, there are plant clones being gunned down in the basement, and the clone of their father traps their dad, and then he's trying to make his kids eat this green slop. One of the nastiest moments from the TV show is just that I don't even know what it is. I don't know what they made in the prop department.
Kids hate vegetables anyway, and then they show something like that. It's like, bro,
just like lumpy, watery cabbage thing.
Yeah, strange. It looks like spinach mixed with like, I don't know, like really watery spinach. But
it was weird.
And then you also have a sense of, like, I would say Reanimator, just the idea of a scientist in the basement working on like experiments, and then it just goes horribly wrong in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
Then we have...
there's what was it? I want to say there was another pod movie, and I cannot think of the name right now.
Pod people?
I mean, obviously there's probably several pod movies, but there's one other one I cannot think of right now for some reason.
What if they did a movie called The
Faculty? Don't she talk about all the different pod people movie in The Faculty?
The Faculty was a parasite, an alien who came with little tiny babies to brainwash everybody and take over their whole entire, nervous system so they could control them like puppets.
Yeah, I love that.
I love the Faculty. Such a good movie.
Early Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I tell you, that was honestly like, that showed me, like, don't get me wrong, I love Robert Patrick as T-1000, but like his role as that coach, even when he's not possessed by an alien parasite, that dude's terrifying.
Yeah.
But then when he gets controlled, it's even worse. He was the creepiest thing in that entire movie. Like he was scared of the giant alien queen at the end. Yeah, right. I mean, damn,
it's like
everything is
giving me goosebumps.
I thought Shooter McGavin was pretty scary in that.
Yeah. Ooh, here's
played Elijah Wood's dad, right? Is that?
Yeah, he did.
McGavin? Yeah.
Forgot about that.
When he took away
a lot of big stars in that movie.
About that. Don't take your teenagers' porn away.
Don't take my porn.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I know I said The Curse of Mummy's Tomb was the only one that had a movie with the same name. Actually, The Headless Ghost also has a movie of the same name from 1959. Big shock. It's about a ghost with no head. The Headless Ghost is a weird book because while it does have a headless ghost, it's more of like a large ensemble haunted house story. There's a lot of different ghosts in the house, so it's more like similar to a basic haunted house movie. Some people consider it like similar to The Haunting, or Amityville Horror or something like that. Just basic sort of ghost movies, and it's basically what it is. It's a basic ghost story in a sense.
Headless Ghost. You know what? It's crazy to me though, because like in 25 years I've been collecting Goosebumps. I've actually met a lot of Goosebump fans that have told me The Headless Ghost is their favorite book. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, even just one of my friends that I met recently at a book fest, she said her favorite book was The Headless Ghost, and I'm like, whoa! Like, surprisingly, I've had quite a few people tell me that's their favorite Goosebump book, and yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those books that apparently a lot of people do like in the community.
Yeah. And then
I enjoyed the episode too.
I actually really like the episode of Headless Ghost. Yeah. I haven't read the book in a long time, but the episode has sort of a nautical theme to it because it's like almost like a lighthouse house. It's off the coast of the ocean. And the main ghost of the house is a sea captain. So there's a lot of like in the music stings, sort of like that nautical sense. It has some really good chase scenes. I would say the ending chase scene is like super intense. I would put it up there with like Werewolf of Fever Swamp in terms of like, monster chases.
Creepy soundtrack too.
It had a really good soundtrack because it also had like really hard guitar riffs and like the really intense moments, like that chase at the end. There's like lots of riffing on the guitar. Really good stuff. Speaking of episodes, I would say More Monster Blood is very similar to, as I said before, a segment from the Twilight Zone movie, that being Terror at 20,000 Feet. In More Monster Blood, you have monster blood on a plane. And when you're in a plane, I think a plane is a terrifying place to have a monster on board.
Motherfucking you can't do snakes anything on this motherfucking plane.
Yeah, you know what? No, seriously, that's the first thing I was gonna joke about as soon as he said,
"I'm tired of this motherfucking monster blood on this motherfucking plane."
Monster blood on a plane, snakes on a plane, anything on a plane, isn't it? Because you're so high up in the sky, like if something goes wrong, you're dead.
Yeah, you're fucked. He's like, what? Do you deal with the monster on the plane, or do you just like jump out the plane and accept your fate? Like, I don't know.
You'll swim with the fishies. Jaws will get you instead, Bruce.
Well, and More Monster Blood is a great episode because it's funny because Monster Blood is such a weird concept, and honestly, most of the books are not good. As well as I don't even think the first episode is that good. This one is great because you have great characters, and just the idea of having a really like dangerous substance on board that can eat you alive. Like even like the littlest bit, like they even say that at the beginning. It's like even if a little bit got on his shoe, it's gonna grow and grow until it's like too big to stop. But the reason I draw the comparison to Terror at 20,000 Feet is because not only do I think it's one of the best Twilight Zone stories, but it's just sort of that paranoia of the main character is like, there's monster blood's on the plane is like, you got to land this plane right now, and nobody believes him. Similar to, the character in Twilight Zone is like, there's a gremlin on the plane, like we're all gonna die. But
there's something on the wing.
There's something on the wing. Yeah, that's the William Shatner one. It's like, but there was some thing on the wing.
Actually, I was quoting Ace Ventura. Thank you very much.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Very similar.
Oh, yes.
Because he quoted it. He quoted the Shatner.
Where he's like opening and closing the thing really fast. The curtain.
There was an SNL skit of that where every time he opened up the shade, like the gremlin was doing something. So like he would open it up and he's like grilling, and then he would just be like, and then he like I think the last time he does it, he's like having a party, like drinking with some friends, and then they all do the same thing. They just go like, it was a really funny sketch. Did you guys ever watch the Twilight Zone movie? It's funny how that movie is honestly scarier in some scenes than the original show.
I think I watched it once, but I really like the old black and white stuff. It's never like not like scary, but it's something about just how brilliant a lot of those ideas were way back then. And like per this topic here, so many movies and things that we love from the 80s, 90s, even modern stuff. You go back, you find a Twilight Zone episode where it's like, oh, that's where they got it from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Simpsons is guilty of that too. The Simpsons did a lot of Treehouse of Horror episodes based on Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the top of that,
Family Guy's done a few references to some Twilight Zone before. I mean, it's such a popular series. I mean, it's hard not to, because there was a lot of iconic moments and characters.
Yeah.
Going into Goosebumps Series 2000, there's two books that I found comparisons to. One is Cry the Cat, similar to Pet Sematary, more in the sense of like Pet Sematary is not all about like dead animals per se. That story goes in a different direction. But the idea of like a monster cat that comes back to life from the dead, and takes away like the lives of others to like replenish his own, is a pretty interesting idea, but it has a lot of similarities to that of Pet Sematary. And then also, the haunted car is, of course, you can draw a lot of Christine, yeah. Again, the original story goes in a little bit of a different direction, Christine. But the haunted car deals with sort of a ghost that's trying to kill its owner. So it keeps like locking it in and trying to like crash him in it. But there's another ghost that like saves him at the last minute.
There is a Malcolm in the Middle episode where his car tries to like kill him in the end when he keeps trying to fix it. I don't know if you remember, but he gets a Mustang and everyone's telling him, oh, you know, it's taking over your life, this car. And he starts going insane trying to fix the car. Like, it's almost like a little bit of horror in that one episode. It's really weird. And then right at the end, the doors all lock. The smoke starts coming out of the car and like, he's basically like suffocating. Like it, and I don't know if that was referencing off Christine, but yeah, it's weird. I know it's Malcolm in the Middle.
Well, I know that the original movie Christine, it is a Mustang, I believe, but I don't know if anything like that happens in the movie.
Oh, it's a Mustang in Christine.
Oh, the Plymouth. Yeah, you're right.
Remember that? Oh, there you go. It must be like they must have been referencing Christine then in that Malcolm in the Middle episode, because it literally like tries like it won't let him out of the car and like everything's like going haywire and the smoke and he's like dying. So yeah, okay.
I don't know if you guys watched the movie Trick or Treat, like I mentioned earlier. You know, my favorite Halloween. It had a little Easter egg in there too. When the school bus scene, when they do that flashback, if you look on the street, there's actually Christine the car there, which is a really cool little Easter egg. So they give a little love nod to some other horror movie classics that Michael Dougherty and the team, you know, obviously had some love for.
A lot of people will say that Trick or Treat is very Goosebumps-esque, in the sense that it's an anthology. I know a lot of people were telling me that. They were like, oh, Trick or Treat's a lot like Goosebumps. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're kind of right.
To an extent, anthology might be the only place. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has werewolves. It kind of, sort of, I mean, it's a very loose adaptation here if you're comparing here, but there's a father who's a murderer, who kills children, but his son, you think he's going to kill him, it turns out he's training his son to be a killer too. So if you go with the girl who cried monster, in a sense, I mean, turns out that the parents are, you know, murderers, and the children eventually they're being groomed too as monsters. So in a sense, you can get some references from every story to a Goosebumps, but again, it's very loose.
It's more in just like the basic like vibe of everything. It's very twisty. It's very cheesy in some of its approaches. Not in reference to a specific book, but just kind of like in the whole general Goosebumps vibe. I can tell you one that isn't comparable at all. I don't think. You guys were talking about The Faculty earlier. There was a post on Reddit that somebody was like, "Oh, a girl cried monsters similar to The Faculty." What?
No.
No. Not even close. Only down to the fact that
if you go by the episodes, maybe Perfect School. Kinda.
Even one's a little loose.
That's a better comparison than The Girl Who Cried Monster, but it's more or less, I feel it's more like Invasion of the Body Snatchers than that, though.
I'm gonna Perfect School that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know where that comparison came from. If it's literally just because the monster is a librarian, not even a school librarian, that's a pretty weak comparison right there.
Yeah, I saw one that wasn't a really good comparison either, and people were just had the cover of Deep Trouble in Jaws and was like, "Look, it's the same.
Look, they're the same cover. They're the same thing because they look the same." It's like, no, they're not the same.
No.
I mean, I think Tim Jacobus took inspiration from Jaws for that cover, but that doesn't mean that the book itself is similar.
Yeah, like the kid swimming and the shark coming up. The difference now, it's a hammerhead. Really,
I was gonna say, I don't know. It's not a great white, man. It's a hammerhead. I don't see what you're talking about, bro.
Another one that I don't necessarily agree with is the comparison of One Day at Horrorland with Hellfest. Only thing similar between those two is that there's a carnival or a theme park. That's it.
That's really it.
I haven't seen Hellfest though. Is it a good movie?
Monsters. Oh yeah, I love Hellfest.
It's decent.
I think it was unique for what it was. The ending I thought was really, really good because it gave you like the sense anybody who your next door neighbor could be this guy, because they never show you the killer's face, which is really cool. He's always wearing a mask. And just the ending, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, like Isaiah, who needs to go see it. But I think it was a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Cody, did you check that one out?
I did. I don't remember too much about it. There was like 2 or 3 movies within about 8 months that were kind of that same concept. There was like a killer at some kind of a fair or a festival or a theme park, and my brain crosses the wires on which ones I actually remember. But I remember Hellfest being pretty decent.
Mm-hmm. And then one last one that I didn't agree with was the comparison of not Chicken.
There's got to be a movie that compares to, surely.
I don't know, man. If there is, I don't want to watch it. If there is, keep it 10 feet away from me.
Franken Turkey.
No, it's Attack of the Mutant and Brightburn. Now, that one's probably the closest of these three I don't agree with, but really only, like, again, surface level. Brightburn is basically what if Superman was... Essentially, what if Superman was evil and murderous? In more specifics, he came from more of a warrior planet. The instinct is to kill and conquer. Done in more of like a slasher type sort of thing. It was an okay movie in my opinion. It wasn't anything spectacular. But Attack of the Mutant is not similar because it's a supervillain and it's very comic book-esque in its approach. But I don't really find those past three similar at all. Which again, I mean, there's a difference between legitimate plot beats and just being like, "Ooh, that has superheroes. That must be similar to that movie." Much like the camp stories, Camp Nightmare, Camp Cold Lake. A lot of people were being like, "Oh, those are like Friday the 13th." It's like, no, just because they take place
at a lake.
Just because they take place at a camp.
It's a camp and a lake.
It must be that one or Sleepaway Camp.
Bingo.
It's like, no, guys, just because it's at a camp does not mean they're similar. But I mean, I guess with Camp Cold Lake, it does feature somebody who died by drowning. but that's like literally it. So, yeah. But Cody, I mean, we've gone down this list. Do you have any comparisons that you could find?
We ended up taking all the ones, so you did more homework than I did. I had about 5 or 6 here. I was like, oh, I can see that. Okay, and I was refreshing my memory on the stories, and then slowly but surely we ended up going through all of them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, there's way more Goosebumps books, but it's harder to find like even of course direct comparisons, but some of them are pretty unique in some aspects. So I mean, like I said, going through all these movies, there's a lot of them that share similar concepts. A lot of them came after, and some of them came before. But it's really interesting to go through them. But
Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, The Scarecrow.
The Scarecrow? Is there a movie called
The Scarecrow? Messengers. No, isn't it called Messengers? Isn't there a film called The Messengers or something? With I know Norman Reedus was on the sequel. Oh God, it's a film about a scarecrow. Pretty sure.
I know before we started recording, you were saying that Scarecrow Walks at Midnight was kind of similar to Jeepers Creepers 2 specifically.
There's like shots that look similar, like
some similarities.
He's always on the cornfields, like and he's always like standing up on the pole, like that scene where like the kid's putting up the scarecrows in the second one, and he's standing on the pole. That just looked very similar to some of the shots from the episode where, like, the kids were just walking around and they saw them up on the pole. I was like, oh, that gives me Jeepers Creepers vibes.
You sure you're on the same movie when you keep talking about the creeper on a pole? I mean, it just makes me, think you might have downloaded the wrong film there, guy.
What would you even call that?
Sure.
Yeah,
actually, don't tell me. I don't want to know.
It's got Norman Reedus, and it's literally about scarecrows. So I don't know, it's got a very similar kind of a plot to, sort of similar to Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, but
I guess you could say that
about scarecrows in a cornfield. So I'm like, well, that's probably the nearest thing I can think of.
I guess you could kind of say that Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes is a little bit like Gremlins. Just kind of down to like the mischievous angle of like these lawn gnomes that, cause trouble and that sort of thing. It's very Gremlin-esque in a way. And the fact that there's so many of them in the book. In the episode, there's just 2. Oh, actually, no, there's 4, but 2 of them come out of nowhere. They just appear and they're never acknowledged or anything like that. But the book definitely has a lot more of like the mischievous angle. Despite the title, they're not getting revenge on anyone. They're just doing it because it's fun. So,
exactly.
But it's kind of like that.
Think the snowman could be like Jack Frost. No, it's
called, God, that movie. Are you talking about the actual horror film, or are you talking about the the Michael Keaton
horror film with
Michael Keaton film?
The actual snowman, like
Yeah.
Oh.
So the Michael Keaton one, aka the scarier one.
Best prank is to walk into Blockbuster and then switch the tapes.
Honestly, I'd be relieved to watch the killer one if I was thinking.
So you hear a child screaming in the other room.
Yeah. Oh God, Michael Keaton, no. Honestly, the thing is that movie, the horror movie with Jack Frost, could have been scarier if they made it look like the Michael Keaton one.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Cody, so you're a horror fan yourself. How familiar are you with like the Goosebumps franchise?
I watched a lot of the show when I was a kid, and I'm sure I probably read a book at some point, but I've just never really been much of a reader. I think something about teachers forcing you to read books you had no interest in kind of like killed it for me. So I would read a little bit of Goosebumps. I would read, there was a series, I don't remember like the overall title of it, but every title was like a ghoul scoops ice cream or a knight makes pizza. That was something like that kind of had a little bit of a Goosebumps aesthetic to it. So I would read those like kids horror type things, and that was about all I would read. But I had VHS tapes for pretty much all the ones that they had released, like Haunted Mask and Werewolf Fever Swamp and Night at Terror Tower, Haunted Mask 2. I remember when that came out, I was like, there's a sequel, and I freaked out. Eventually there was like they quit doing the clamshell VHSs, which was the big ones that I always had, and they started just doing the little paper sleeve ones, and that's where I had the Night of Living Dummy 3 and the one where the kids are being turned old by their aunt or their grandma. So most of my experience with it is with the live action adaptations.
Did you so you grew up with the VHS tapes? What would you say was like your favorite among them?
The Haunted Mask easily. And it's not even close. That was the one that I like. I liked the second one, and I liked all of them. There was always something I would go back to, but the Haunted Mask, if I watched any of the other ones once, I've watched the Haunted Mask 10 times in between. So that was always my favorite.
I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum ourselves, but but yeah, I mean, we consider, well, but Bjorn actually has 2 episodes on his list higher than it, but I know me and Nick definitely consider the Haunted Mask to be the best episode, as well as a lot of people. It was an episode that was unlike anything else in the Goosebumps TV show and franchise. Even the sequel wasn't really on the same level. Because it was mainly psychological. It was a great character study. You had a very sympathetic main character in it, and it actually was a lot more emotional than many other Goosebumps stories. Goosebumps as a whole is very, spooky, sort of fun, turn your brain off sort of stuff for the most part. Haunted Mask is one that definitely like kind of tugs on the heartstrings a little bit, because you have a very sympathetic character who just wants to be accepted. Yeah. And she feels like she has to go to this drastic extreme in order to get what she wants. But, once it's near too late, figures out that it's like, it's not what she wants, and it's corrupting her at the same time. Funny enough, we actually we've got to talk to many guests here on the podcast who've been involved with the TV show, and we actually did an interview with the actress of Carly Beth.
Oh, okay.
In one of our past episodes, and she was super nice. But one thing I'll never forget is
and Chuck.
And Chuck, yeah, and we actually will be talking to the main actress of Sue in Night and Terror Tower, one of the main characters. But
Sabrina.
One thing I will never forget is when I was explaining sort of like the deeper aspects of the Haunted Mask, and she was with us, and when I finished, she was like, "Wow, I never thought of it like that." I was just in here, doing this job. But that really is it. I mean, I've seen many a video essay on this episode, more than any other Goosebumps episode before. But those specific ones that were on VHS are definitely among some of the best. I know we talked about Dead House. That's a really good atmospheric one. Living Dummy 3, I honestly think is the best Slappy episode. It's at least my personal favorite.
I like that one.
It's a really fun one.
It's like the way it goes is like Night of Living 3 is like, it's a bigger production, but like Night of Living 2 was just spookier, like creepier, like more. Like, even just the shots where, like, she threw him in the trunk and the music, and it would just pan straight into his face, like, real abrupt. And the POV shots, like, I just think that was more spooky. And 3, I love 3, but it just annoys me when it goes from dummy to person constantly. And I just so obviously, as a kid, I didn't notice it at all. But in 2, it's just the puppet the whole time. And, even just the scene where she throws him down into the sewer, and then like he's just standing at the foot of her bed, like those little things just creep me out a lot as a kid. The guitar smashing, like, I don't know. I used to find that one just creepy, because season 1 of Goosebumps, they were trying to make it more creepy. And then season 2, we started going more down the, creepy, but, a little more cool. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. So I always found it and the music was creepier too.
Well, and for context, when he was saying dummy to person, there's a lot of scenes. I don't know if you noticed it or not, Cody, but there's a lot of scenes in Living Dummy 3 where it's very clearly a person in a costume. Oh yeah. Especially when they're having to move, and you'll just you'll see that it's quite different. They don't really hide it that well.
It
Freeze
is
in
a
the right
better
place.
made
And you get like a
episode.
Ninja Turtles thing, and the mouth is open on them, but you see the mouth of
see
the
the
person
mouth
inside
inside the
too.
mouth.
It's like,
But I rank Goosebumps episodes when I rank them in terms of what creeped me out as a kid, like genuinely spooked me, and like Welcome to Dead House was fucking scary. Like I don't even know how that was considered a kid's thing, you know, like there was some scenes in that where it was just like straight out creepy.
Well, and if you go off the book, it could have been more intense.
Yeah, like I don't know, there was just certain things that were just scary. Like Haunted Mask was like best like story episode, you know what I mean? Like character driven stories, performances even too. Like Catherine Long as Callie Beth was, I think she won an award for that. You know, like, but I always ranked the episodes in order of what just freaked the shit out of me as a kid. And like Welcome to Dead House spooked me. Camp Nightmare didn't really scare me, but I don't know what it is. I just love summer camp. You know, my favorite book is Horror Camp Jelly Jam, which is a camp related one. They never made that into an episode, but they did Camp Nightmare. So that's kind of like why that one just ranks so high. But yeah, I go by the ones that freak me out, like spooky.
Absolutely. Have you guys ever seen those like mock-up Goosebumps covers where they take like a picture from a horror movie and they put it in like a Goosebumps book? So like they'll take like a picture from like Friday the 13th and it's like a night at Camp Blood or something like that. I always thought those were pretty funny.
See a lot of those with like t-shirts, like little mashups.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's been a few t-shirt companies that do stuff like that. Even with there was one that I think Cavity Colors actually was the one that did it both times. Maybe Bright Rags, I can't remember which one, but one of them did like the movie Trick or Treat, but it was the Haunted Mask 2 cover, but it just had Sam on the porch. You could definitely tell it was meant to be a reference to that. And then there was another one that was a Halloween 4 shirt that had Jamie Lloyd in the clown costume on it on a Goosebumps book cover. So there's been a few out there that have actually made it to product stage rather than just even an image on the internet. But I've seen quite a few images on the internet. Terrifier seems to be the one that has been popular lately for some reason, probably because of the third one coming up.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the Terrifier movies in themselves are like really, really, really cheesy movies. So it's like, even though it's super gory, violent stuff, honestly, I have not seen those movies yet because of what I have seen. I feel like I would get way too sick to my stomach.
Swear by them. I know people that swear by them. My good friend Logan, that's his favorite thing in the world. It's Terrifier. Like that is his. When we went to the book fest, he was just like, we went to the comic section with the collectibles. He was just like, I'm here for Terrifier stuff. I don't care about anything else. Like that was it. And I'm just like, whoa. So I finally watched them and fuck, like I enjoyed them. They're great. They are, they're disgusting. That's what they are. Like they're vile in terms of just.
So did you watch the original one the art was in of All Hallows Eve?
Yeah.
It wasn't all that great.
No, I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm not really a big fan of anthologies. Trick or Treat's like one of the few examples of ones that I do like. But I watched the All Hallows Eve, and I remember nothing about the segments that didn't have art, and then the segment that did have art. Let's just say there's a reason they recasted them for the movies and went a little more with the concept. So it was, I wasn't a big fan of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, David Howard Thornton did a much better job in that role. Very glad they recasted him because I think that's where a lot of that popularity for that franchise comes from, is his portrayal of Art the Clown more than anything, because again, it's very gory. Honestly, like I don't think there was really a story per se in that first Terrifier movie. It was crazy. It was just
Art the Clown craziness. Does things. The movie.
The second one kind of gave you more of a story though, and it looks like they're going to continue that in the third one. So, but
I like 2 more. I think 2 was better.
Well, and it's so like it's so rare now that we get like new horror icons. Like I don't think I've ever seen a horror character rise to popularity among like, you know, the pre-established ones, like the Freddys and Jasons, like as much as Art the Clown. Like it was almost like overnight that this character just caught on, and it's so uncommon to see that nowadays in horror, which
Like when Goosebumps died in the 90s, it was overnight.
it was
From what I was told.
overnight.
I'm just like,
Yeah, it was.
Harry Potter came in. It was just like, goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
With all
Harry
the
Potter
troubles
now?
we talked about before with Scholastic and Stein and all that stuff was killing it. Harry Potter was just there at the right time to swoop in and pick up the slack that Goosebumps left and never looked back.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm curious,
you know?
Cody, have you watched the Goosebumps movies by chance?
I watched the one with Jack Black. I did not watch the other one. Me and my kids and my wife went to go see it in theaters, and we had a really good time with it. It was enough of an homage for me, and it was enough of its own fun little thing for them. So I dug that one quite a bit. And I started watching the series with Justin Long, and I never ended up going back to it. But I thought that it was interesting. I don't know if I watched one or two episodes. It was like an interesting little modernization that they were doing there, but for some reason I kind of fell off of it.
Yeah, it's understandable. We've talked about the 2023 series enough to at this point. I've heard our audience is pretty sick of us talking about it, but I mean, we had our reservations with the show. I personally, I thought it was meh. It did feel like it was going somewhere at first because, like you said, the modernizations of the classic books, but it honestly dropped it pretty quickly. And by the time you got halfway through the season, it was on the continuing story outright. And then it had a decent conclusion in episode 8, and then you had 2 more episodes for the season, which felt like a super elongated epilogue that kind of derailed everything. But the movies are the movies are fun. I would recommend if you're into like if you're really in the mood for like something schlocky and corny and campy, the second one's pretty fun. It's not exactly like the first one, but there's some elements, but there's a lot more emphasis on Slappy as the main antagonist. It has a little fun with the concept of Halloween decorations coming to life. That's kind of the crux of it. It's a little, it does try to be a little more scary than the first one, whether or not
He's more like he is in the book in the second one. Like there's scenes where like he literally, I don't want to spoil it, but there are some scenes in this one that are like straight out of a Night of the Living Dummy book. In the first one, he's more just like, oh, screw you, Stein. I hate you. Like, I'm going to get you back. The second one was like, no, he's doing straight up things that are like, you know, pretty twisted and evil. Like
well, he's creepy because he's trying to like be a part of the main character's family, but it's like it's a really weird sort of attachment sort of thing. And then when he gets rejected, he's just kind of like, all right, I'll take this family by force, and I'll create this army. And then he turns the mom into a ventriloquist dummy in a really interesting effect. So
even that, it's another book thing. So he did it.
It's an interesting movie. It's not grade A cinema or anything, but neither was the first one. The first one was fun. I remember going to see it on opening day, and I was super, super stoked.
This one felt bigger though. Like it was bigger.
Well, it had more. More.
The first one I think had a more publicity. It had a better budget,
and
probably, and well, that's why I said it probably had a better budget. Because it had Jack Black the whole time, whereas the second one was just a cameo appearance, basically. But I think, like we talked about, a lot of that was due to House with a Clock on its Walls, which is another great film, in my opinion, that he did. But yeah, the first one definitely felt more cinematic, whereas the second one did feel more like a Goosebumps episode rather than a movie. If that makes any sense. Yeah, I guess just with how they shot everything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it was bad. I mean, I'd recommend it still. I mean, it's still a fun one around Halloween time, especially.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Cody, I want to thank you for coming on and talking with us. It was a really good time, and we thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Where can our audience find you on social media?
So the main place to find me is on YouTube to search my name, Cody Leach, and there's also links to everywhere else on there. But pretty much everywhere else, I've tried to have my name branded as Cody Leach YT. So whether it's Instagram, Twitter, everywhere else, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. And I'll make sure for our audience that you guys can go check out Cody's channel, social medias. I'll leave some links in the description below. Go check him out, support him. He really does deserve it. He's awesome. So thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it. And of course, as always, make sure you follow the Goosebumps crew. Make sure you follow Bjorn and Nick on their social medias and YouTube's Goosebumps Sauce Fan and Sean, respectively. And of course, as always, follow the Goosebumps Crew podcast. Leave a like and comment if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe and hit the bell notification. Follow us on our audio platforms to hear episodes a day early. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. And follow the Goosebumps Crew on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. All those links are in the description below. We'll have a new episode of the Goosebumps Crew podcast for you next week, but until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew podcast. From all of us here, we want to wish you all to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.